I assume you're downstairs, Susan?
We are live.
The boys had a great season. It would have been nice if, I think if we would have played the way we could have. So it was the better team for the day, so.
I told him. Call.
I actually want to see.
Sure.
Specific that you actually want to see.
I assume that they're okay with you.
This is good.
Well, yeah, that's why I didn't reply.
Yeah.
If you are.
You're expecting.
Yeah, you can participate during the discussion. It's up to you. You enough for everybody? Okay, you want to wait or do you want to? Okay. It's sticky here.
Yeah, I figured out my dot,
You what?
the dot.
Oh, yeah.
Did you figure it out?
No, but mine went away.
It's this.
Oh, the mouse.
And it doesn't go away. It just stays for a long time and then it just goes away.
Yes.
So it's
Okay,
a mouse.
so I looked at mine as well, I didn't even think about it.
Yep. Yeah, I don't know how to get rid of it once you,
I don't think you can, because it's the mouse part of it. so you
yeah, you
probably
just
could-
have to wait for it to go away or something.
Are you ready, Ken? I'd like to call this meeting in order. Please rise for the pledge of allegiance and a moment of silence. The pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Robbins,
Here.
Commissioner Rushton,
Present.
Chairman Bonnet,
Here.
Commissioner Wessel,
Here.
Commissioner Solis Little,
Here,
Commissioner Alguier,
Here.
Commissioner Lautner,
present.
all present.
So then we have approval of the agenda and any late additions. Commissioner West.
I'd like to move that we remove items 2 and 3 off of the agenda. We have a tradition of taking recommendations from our administrator and doing a detailed budget work first. And I believe it's inappropriate to have 2 and 3 on the agenda at this time.
I would support that. That concerns me as well, but we have nothing specific to speak about.
Commissioner Lautner.
I would disagree. We have a committee process. This board chose not to follow its committee process. This board chose to go and do a committee of the whole meeting. Those 2 items need to stay on the agenda.
Any other comments? Commissioner Solis.
This is one of our processes that we've used many times. So we are following the process. And it would be fine to leave it on if there was something to discuss. Nothing was provided before the meeting. There's been no information, no data, no documentation of any problem that we're solving. I don't know why we would not move this to the budget time and talk with the clerk about what she might need at that point in time. But I don't see a reason to keep it on right now because there's nothing to discuss that's been provided to us in advance.
I would say we could begin the discussion, at least have that, even if it's short, at least start it and begin it. I understand, either way it works, I think. But I think I did provide something that I gave to the administrator in an email this morning, and I believe he passed that out at the time. So at least it would, at the time of when it comes to the agenda. That was the only thing, and I just did that over this weekend.
But that's not the way we do business. We usually take our recommendations from the administrator, we look at budget implications, we first define the problem we're trying to solve, and then we have advanced time to review proposals. Receiving a proposal at today's meeting that was submitted to the administrator this morning, the timing is off. We just got an A-grade audit. We haven't identified any problems we're trying to address. We know there are cost implications. This commission has a tradition of trying to be fiscally responsible. It is fiscally irresponsible to proceed in the manner that we have proceeded.
Commissioner Rush.
We began this conversation a month or so ago. Today is basically an informal discussion about the potential of a finance and human resources department. We can bury our heads in the sand and think everything here is absolutely perfect. We can assume that we get all the information from our administrator. We can assume that we have all the pertinent information that we need, but there are improvements out there that we can make. Not only for the Board of Commissioners, but for directors and our employees. So I think today is a great start for us to have an open discussion about how it is that we can improve the environment under this roof, enhance our abilities to, or be proactive, as we've always been told, reactive, in regards to efficiencies, and so on and so forth. I'm not going to go into great detail at this point, but I think it's a beginning point for us to have an honest look at some of the strategies that we use here, processes that we use here, and this is just a beginning. I see this conversation long-term. It's not an overnight slam dunk. This is a very serious issue. We've got a couple things that are coming. The administrator had provided the board with some confidential information about changes that are going to be happening. And I think now is the time that we start looking at a broad look of how we do business here at the county.
Commissioner Allen.
The clerk has already asked that a vacated position be filled. I think the only concrete, real thing that we have heard from the clerk's office, is yes, they are busy, but they've been asking to have a position filled. That's an immediate thing that we can do. If the clerk's office is overworked, let them fill their empty position. And then anything we do, I would not want to feel comfortable taking even one step without hearing in depth from the clerk's office about what they need, what works, are there improvements to be made? But we need to hear from the people who know. Their work has been excellent, always. There are no complaints that I've ever seen in the quality of the work they do. So any changes have to come from them. But let's fill their position.
All right, so here we're talking about the agenda, so let's, I would just wonder if we want to move, decide whether we want to go with removing these two items from the agenda. We have to have a vote on that. And I'd like us to try to do that. I mean, is that, unless someone else, do you want to speak, Commissioner Soto?
All I want to say is, I agree with Commissioner Rushland that it's always good to take a broad look, but to have an open-ended discussion, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a targeted discussion on just two things. And, that's totally different. So I think we remove that until it's appropriate, and that's the budget time for discussion there. Not to have an open meeting or an open discussion that really isn't open. It's targeted on two things. So if we're gonna look at everything, let's look at everything, but that's not looking at everything. So I would hope we could take it off right now and revisit this at budget time.
Well, since we're gonna speak to this twice, I'll speak to this twice. This is the time. We set up this meeting, we set aside a half a day to deal with this. So to have someone obviously try so hard to get it off the agenda, to try to derail even the process of looking at these is very alarming. This should have already gone to committee, but this board chose to send it to the committee of the whole. Now you're trying to derail it from even that process. A lot can be learned today. We need to find information, even to go into budget time. By derailing it, you're hoping to just push it further down the road. I get that. But there's much information to be gathered, and this is already June. So this is already mid-June. So it's time to start some of those processes, and today's the day to start some of those processes. So my information in looking especially at the separation of a finance department actually started with the separation of the finance department actually started with our county clerk last fall. So I think it is time to have this discussion.
Call the question.
Are there any other comments? Okay,
So the question is are you going to remove them?
yes, the thing is, the motion is to remove 2 and 3. So let's ask a roll call vote here.
Commissioner Wessel,
Yes.
Commissioner Elgar,
Yes.
Chairman Bunnick,
No.
Commissioner Lautner,
No.
Commissioner Robbins,
No.
Commissioner Rushton,
No,
Commissioner Sotos Little.
Yes,
Fails 3-4.
So look for a motion about,
Motion to approve the agenda as presented?
I'll support.
any comments? Okay. I'll also have a roll call vote.
Okay, just a minute. Motion was by Lautner, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Commissioner Lautner,
Yes.
Commissioner Robbins,
Yes.
Commissioner Rushton,
Yes,
Commissioner Sotos Little,
no,
Commissioner Wessel,
No.
Commissioner Elgar,
No.
Chairman Bunnick.
Yeah.
Passes 4-3.
Okay, so we now have an agenda. So then that would then bring us to public comment. At this time, if you wanted to call in, it's 231-256-8109. 231-256-8109. Is there anybody in the audience who wants public comment? We'll just give them a second for that.
While you're waiting, if you could sometimes today or even this week, send me a quick email or even on a piece of paper, write down days you would not be available from mid-July through mid-September. So we move in our budget. So either email, put on the back agenda, or even a little piece of paper would be fine, just whatever you can do.
Thank
And
you.
obviously those dates can change, but just to start the planning.
Thank you for the reminder.
Okay, so now we would move on to the purpose of the meeting and the committee of the whole. The first item is the senior services reorganization plan.
That's what's up. April, is that the same that was in their budget? packet?
Yeah, it's the same thing that was sent to you. I just provided hard copies in case you wanted that instead, so.
So you don't have a more recent budget, you only have till the end of April is the last.
That is correct. That's all I have at this time.
Let me do it this way, it'll be easier to collate them.
Sorry, Jeff.
All those years as a teacher, Chet, paid up. You can distribute those pretty well.
Oh, yeah, thank you, yeah, years of experience here.
Didn't think about doing it that way.
The mammogram. All right, they all have them. Oh, I didn't see these. These are,
Yeah, they've all.
The last page supposed to be blank.
I think it was my error in printing that I did not realize I had carried it over. So you can, that'll be your note page, Will.
All right.
You can make some notes.
I just wanted to make sure that.
Oh, yeah, no, yeah, I think that was my error, so.
and Laurel can do the couple.
Yeah, another, okay. So good afternoon. I'm here to discuss our restructuring senior services. I've been before this board several times and how restructuring and trying to address the growing population's needs and looking at different things on how we can best serve our seniors. And so this year has been certainly a year of a lot of change with COVID and good and bad, and seeing all we've had things that have come forward in our work that we were not anticipating, that probably only a pandemic could bring light into some of the issues. So, and one of the big changes for our office is that Nancy Beckerman, after 12 years, is retiring, and so I'm very excited for her, but very sad for our office. She has so much historical knowledge and has been a great asset in providing wonderful service for our seniors. And as a result then, I had to look at our department and determine what was going to be best in meeting the needs that we are seeing in hiring new staff and what that would look like. And so I know the population continues to grow. We're continuing to see, we've talked about this the tsunami of seniors as they age and what that's going to look like down the road. And unfortunately, the pandemic just kind of sent us on a trajectory that we weren't anticipating. It sped us along much faster than we had thought about. And so it made me look really hard at our department and how we were going to address the needs we're seeing today, as well as looking into the future. And so I came up with a restructure plan, a proposal. I presented it to Chet, and then it was presented to my Senior Services Advisory Committee to review. Will made the motion to bring it to the entire board for approval and discussion about what you would like to see senior services look like in the future. And so here I am today to discuss the proposals or the change proposal I'm anticipating. And so when we passed the millage, and we've been working for several years, you can't hear me?
A little closer to the mic, please.
Let me try. Is that better? Okay, sorry. So when we looked at the future and looking at a plan, there was, I've been talking for years about what a vision would look like, how we could best serve seniors with our growing population. Currently, we have about 43% of the population are 60 years of age or older. And so as over the several years, we've worked with colleagues as well as community members and creating a vision for how we could address those changes in our county. And so out of that came, we wanted to build an inclusive senior network with senior services kind of being that hub where people would reach out to us first, and then we could network them with other resources in our area. We're really recognizing that social isolation is a concern in our rural area, and people not having access to services or connecting with other people. So we wanted to grow those socialization and address those issues as well. And we created a vision of how to create a healthy aging or a proactive approach to meeting the needs. Can we go to the next slide? And so when we look at research and what the needs are for the different ages, this has come up like when, we provide services for seniors that are 60 on up to over 100. And so obviously every senior has maybe a different need at a different time. And we find that in your 60s, you might need more education as you're beginning to think about what it might look like when you're aging in place and what services you may anticipate needing. But when we hit to like at 75 plus, that's when, unfortunately, as I like to say, our body begins to betray us. And we tend to have some more health challenges along the way. And we're finding that seniors need more support, whether that's through our department or through other resources in the community. Oftentimes we are the first contact of people contacting us looking for that information of where do I turn to? Can you help me, or can you guide me on the road of who I can reach out to for that support? And then obviously 80 plus, we get to begin to really see that more intense support where we have a lot of seniors that need a lot of someone to walk with them to really help guide them through the aging process. And so right now I would say that we're beginning, as the baby boomers are aging, we're beginning to see more and more of those baby boomers in that 75 plus. So we are receiving an increased number of calls to us, or people contacting us, whether it's themselves or family members that are really looking for assistance. And so we are just kind of bombarded with addressing those crisis calls or those, really needing assistance right away. And so having to respond to that. Next slide, please. There we go. So this was like an image that was created out of an Aging Well in Leelanau committee that was made up of a number of, including ShareCare and other organizations. Munson representative was present. We had a number of agencies, area agency, as we looked at and discussed what could we do to create a healthy, proactive approach for Leelanau County because of the large percentage of seniors. And we were anticipating at that point that we knew that down the road, we were hoping several years that we begin to see a shortage of caregivers and to be able to provide service, and what was that going to look like in a county where 43% are seniors and there's not as many people to take care of those seniors. So how are we going to provide the support they need to remain in their home? And so this kind of talks about we would use community coordinators or connections, and we would be the hub of that and connecting individuals with networks that we would have with churches and family members, as well as organizations that could help with meals and transportation, being able to provide that education preventative approach of, here are some things to be thinking about as you're aging in place that you can put in for supports, as well as making sure that there was healthcare available in the home. That's what was needed for them to remain there. And so this was the vision that we had created together as a community and what we've been working towards. Next slide. And so the pandemic, really has shown us, and the trajectory has increased at an alarming rate. We're already seeing shortages in caregivers, and home health agencies not being able to provide caregivers, and a large number of people needing services, and they may be on wait list, or it may take a little longer than usual. So trying to come up with those creative approaches of how we can meet those needs. So looking at my department and the challenges that we are seeing on a daily basis, we're getting 2 to 3 calls from people who are in crisis, and they need that immediate assistance right away. And so there's 3 of us in my office, and we're doing the best we can just to keep up with those crises, that immediate need. Yeah.
So give us an example of what are some of these crises that you are seeing?
Sure. So last week we had a couple family members. It was two different families, same type of situation, where a daughter or son came for a visit to see their parents, and when they arrived, they were surprised at the assistance they really needed to remain safely in their home. And they were only there, that daughter or son was only there for a short period of time. So they had to try to get services in place right away before they were to leave in 2 to 3 days. And each individual, each senior, there was a different one really needed to have food, a way for them to access food, and needed some assistance with homemaking, medication management. Another one, there was a couple that one of the spouses had dementia, needed that additional, and so the partner needed that additional support, and involving respite care and different things like that. So it involves that immediate, responding to those immediate needs. And I think that, we're able to respond to that, try to get those big picture things, like to get the respite care, to get the personal care, med management. We can make those referrals. We can find, we can deal with those things. What has been challenging is not because it's just one case after another case just like that, and not having the time to really spend, and not having the team or the staffing to really spend time with that person or that individual or that family, determine, okay, well, this is the big items, or these are the big things that really need to be addressed, but what about the smaller things? Can this person prepare a meal? Do we need to look at deeper things like that? Can they get the mail? Can they manage their finance? There's so many layers. And we feel like we're just responding to the bigger picture. That's what we have time for. That's what we're able to address, and moving on. Whereas we don't have the time to really look and go deeper in discovering those needs. So those are some of the things we're seeing that have changed. I would say we get 2 to 3, on average, probably 1 to 2 calls a day that are in that state. Sometimes you can handle it over the phone. Sometimes it requires going out and doing a visit with that family member, and those seniors. It just depends on the situation. Every situation is different. So that's what we're seeing, that 75 plus, that it's, the train is moving pretty fast in that way.
So generally there would be an evolution, and the children would normally pick up on it, a neighbor would pick up on it, a friend but so these people with no
lot of times
around here?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
No one around here, so no support group around here generally, so suddenly somebody comes and the decline is great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Wilson.
April, on that first position,
Yeah.
the care coordinator, nurse, or social worker, it seems to me that depending on whether it was a nurse or a social worker, the services available would be quite different. And
I agree, I wondered about that too, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, you have a range there, yes, of different, they're gonna have a different approach. There's still gonna be that connection and care. I think a nurse is gonna come from more of that medical background, whereas a social worker is going to come from more of that social and systems approach, looking at all the different resources. Ideally, that's what I'm proposing to have. I would really love to have like a nurse as a care coordinator that's on staff, as well as a resource coordinator that has that social work background, to create that team approach, so we can look at that whole person. We have contracted with ShareCare for care coordination services, and we've had that service, and typically the care coordinator is working with us 2.5 days, and we're just finding there's a gap there with the number of calls and the number of requests of people for assessments or services. It's hard to keep up, and finding there's just a disconnect in having when you contract with someone and when you have someone that's as an employee and the staffing that creates that team. There's just there's a gap there. So I think we would be a much stronger department to have a stronger foundation, to have a care coordinator that we have on staff full time, that is there, that can help to respond to those immediate needs that we're getting and requests for services. So that is one proposed change, to move from a contracted care coordination position to having a full-time care coordinator in-house. I'm also proposing to add the resource coordinator, which is going to look at to be able to dive in with those individuals and couples, those seniors, to look at what other how we can network them with other resources, ShareCare being one of them, absolutely, but then also other resources too, and to have that team approach. We're also, I've had a vacant part-time position for a while, and that was my choice. When David Worm left, we chose not to fill that position, wanting to see what we're, knowing that we were heading towards looking the increase in services. I wanted to be able to see what was really needed. And so we've had a half-time vacant position. So I'm proposing to fill that half-time position with a safety coordinator that's assisting with like the medical equipment loan closet, to doing education and approaches with scams, and helping with the emergency pendants and setting those up, and just looking at it from a safety perspective. We still continue to do a lot of calls and maintenance on emergency pendant systems. We work closely with Munson when we can't meet a need, but to have somebody there that can troubleshoot and work with a senior on that, that's a rising need that we're seeing as well. Next slide. So I really think that we need to be a stronger hub, to have a stronger foundation for the services we're providing, so that we can, when somebody calls in, we're able to really determine what is needed. In the proposal, I proposed reducing the volunteer coordinator position by half with ShareCare. That is an important piece. That's something I still strongly believe in, having a volunteer coordinator. I think it is a progressive idea. It's a progressive, a way of looking at addressing the needs of aging, especially in our county with a large number. So, I mean, I'm not falling away from the vision, but I'm seeing the gaps in that because we're not able to really fully utilize, I believe, the volunteer coordinator to its full potential, because we don't have that strong enough foundation of having a care coordinator or a resource coordinator on staff that can really work with a senior to determine what would be beneficial to have a volunteer for. When we're in crisis, you can't see the forest for the trees often. And that's when we have a senior that, we can come to them and they're saying, I have these needs, or this is, and usually it's those big items of needing respite care or med management, or, focusing on those. They can't even think beyond of like, oh, it would be really beneficial to have someone pick up groceries, or it'd be very beneficial for me to have someone pick up mail, or to call me once a week. They can't even think about that. They're just looking at those. And so I think we have to have a stronger foundation to be able to work with that senior closely to determine what is it a volunteer could help this individual or this couple with really in that way. And so I was proposing to pull back to build a stronger hub and foundation for senior services so that we can make those referrals for the volunteer coordinator to really fully utilize that. When we refer people to Share Care for that volunteer coordination service, or letting them know that they have this great program, they have this great service, we are finding that the senior may not be able to follow up and say, I need this, or they're told, I think they're overwhelmed with a lot of information of the possibility that they can't put those words, they can't find the words of what they really need or what would be beneficial. And so I think this was a gap that came out of with COVID. We were on the path and it was working great, but I think COVID shone a light on that and seeing the gap of and the increase of what the needs we're seeing. So that was my proposal in that realm. As far as like adding and reducing staffing, in the restructure vision, it kind of just gives on the second page, it talks about the positions that I just discussed, as well as proposed income or the salary for those positions as well. I'm looking at that, and and if you would also notice on this, the senior services staffing estimations. So this will give you an idea of the salary and wages and the current wages and positions of what the LCSS currently has. How much is we are budgeted for services for the care coordinator and volunteer coordinator with Share Care, and the proposed changes and what the cost and now the estimate of that would be.
April,
Yes.
in where you describe the positions, each one, and give the amount. Number 4, the safety coordinator, you have it as 27,000, but then at the bottom of when you add it up here, it's 23. So it really should be 353,000.
Okay. I apologize. I did not catch that.
You just, it's
Okay.
just to clarify.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
Do you see that? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, Commissioner Lautner.
Why do you need an account clerk?
I don't, an account clerk is what the account clerk is the person that was a finance coordinator before with Kathy, if you recall, Kathy Harsville had that position. So this person manages our unmet need and financial assistance program in dealing with vendors and assisting with paying utility bills or other assistance type programs. They're helping to manage, looking at the budget and looking at where we're documenting how much we've spent in certain line items in regards to like looking at financial needs, how they're accounting for our BOC grants as an example. Those are specific grants that we are awarded and keeping track of that to determine how much is left or what we have available for assistance. So that is their role.
So who filled that after Kathy? Was that
Armanda took that position on.
Armanda.
Yep, on top of her other position, yes.
What other departments in this building have their own position that looks at their bills being paid?
So,
Account.
Yeah, I think that's probably a misnomer, the title.
yeah.
That's right, because you're right, when you think of account clerk, you think of accounting. That's really not what you're proposing. I think maybe the title is incorrect.
I don't see description either. That would probably be more helpful, but am I just not?
I would think that planning probably has one, does the same type of thing for housing. They figure out how much is paid, how much hasn't.
So maybe this title is not a good title. I'd like to see the description. I'm not finding the description.
Would that be right?
No, I think you're right. The term accounting clerk, I think most people think of that as someone in the accounting department.
Okay.
That's not what you're saying.
No, it's never, yeah.
It's a review of the
So it's
applicants
reviewing
for-
of applications, it's determining, helping to assist with paying for that finance. So we prepare, so if we have a senior that, let's say needs heating assistance, they're gonna they're gonna complete an application, that account clerk would be, our finance coordinator is gonna help us look through that application and determine what the need level is that they would be eligible for. They're gonna, when they receive a heating bill from that person asking for assistance, that person is gonna prepare that bill to be sent to accounting to be paid. But there's a lot, there's keeping track of spreadsheets on our end, tracking how much money, that person may have available to them, how much we're utilizing out of a grant, how much we're utilizing out of millage dollars, looking at that whole picture.
Would it oversee the unmet needs as well?
Yes, that's what that
I mean, there's
is.
$100,000 there
Yes.
that has to be overseen.
Yep.
A different title would be helpful, but also a description would be helpful.
Okay.
Commissioner Allen.
And I think I would just like to point out that for the age group that you're working with, they probably especially need that help. Because if someone is older and I had neighbors already who could no longer deal with those kinds of details, those kinds of computerish, they just couldn't do it. They would need a lot of help.
So,
And
yeah.
that's it, people are pretty functional in many ways, but scary to see your neighbors.
So we get permission, yes, from, we have anybody that receives financial assistance or oftentimes we have a lot of people that call us and say, I need help advocating with my vendor of, my utilities or a medical bill. I'm having trouble because everything is on the computer or automated and I can't navigate that, like you said, that system. So Amanda does a lot of work with that. With COVID, she helped a lot of people with Secretary of State because everything was online and that was very difficult. There were a number of things that we've done related to COVID and helping navigate systems that are online or not, because they're not in person. And we have a lot of seniors that struggle to do that.
Commissioner.
First of all, I want to thank you for the work you do. I'm new at this. So how many years have you been here?
8.5 years.
8.5 years. So 8.5 years, you've watched the county grow.
Yes,
Yeah, it's growing.
it's continued, yes.
My next question, right now we contract these positions out for these services.
We contract out for the care coordinator
Okay, so they're kind of doing the work that.
and the volunteer
we want
coordinator.
County employees.
Yes, I would like to have a care coordinator be a county employee.
So,
The volunteer coordinator, I do not want to take that on.
so now, under this contract here, if that person can't show up, they're obligated to have a person show up to provide the services for us?
It's not specific.
There is no backup.
There's no backup,
No
no.
backup. So my point is I didn't know if we had backup with them. I mean, if we hire a full-time person and, for whatever reason, medical, family leave, what do we do then if they're off for 6 months?
And that would be the reason of having a social worker background with a resource coordinator of the new position I'm proposing, because that person could do that. It might take a different slant, but they would be able to do that same type of work.
Okay. My next question is on your town clerk, what's the qualifications for that?
To have the background in either accounting or to have a finance or have experience doing the type of work.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. I'm all set, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great- Excuse-
Yeah.
April, back to the question Commissioner Bunting had. I assume your safety coordinator that you have 23,176, that must have been a detailed number that you worked with.
I worked with Jen.
Yeah, so I think your 27,000 was the estimate you did before you got this number.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing this number is correct. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
So I'm guessing your 27,000 was your guess that you did your report prior to, because I know you did
Yes,
this.
I did the report prior, yeah.
So this is correct then?
Commissioner Sotomayor.
April, I was just going to ask you to kind of walk me through the old position to the new positions, because I'm just looking at how pieces have been added together to create. So the old position, of course, there's your position, both, which remains the same. The assistant director was Nancy. And so her position now is being changed to,
So the duties that Nancy had as an assistant director, basically would be divided between the care coordinator and the resource coordinator.
that's what I thought, okay.
Yeah.
And then the secretary position, which is Alonda, which is remaining.
Yeah.
That now falls into Ms. Howe.
So that changing the title and looking was account clerk, but from your feedback today, maybe looking
You
at
know what I'm
different.
thinking though? I think that's a term that's in the labor contract, is
It
it?
is, that is correct.
That's where that term came
That term
from.
is in your contract.
That's in the labor
Because
contract.
that's a union position, so I think we were looking at what was a comparable position.
Which was filled by Mr. Worm. His title was account clerk.
And yeah, so that's where that came from. So that's where you got that title from.
So that the account clerk remained, that's the half-time that wasn't filled before.
Correct. So Amanda, as a program assistant, absorbed the majority of those duties on top of being a program assistant.
And then the care coordinator was the nurse.
Yes, we have been contracting with Share Care for our care coordination services. And it works out to be about 2.5, on average, about 2.5 days a week is what we end up.
And you're saying with what's coming up, you need to be able to move to that nurse as you need.
Yes.
Individual assistants. And then the volunteer coordinator was done solely.
It's been solely by Share Care, correct, contracted.
And I understand what you were saying with the gaps. I can see how some seniors would have difficulty. Is there a way to alter that system so that the senior isn't making the request, that your department knows what they want, simply sends the request on to Share Care?
Yes, I think that that's us building a strong enough foundation to have the staffing to be able to look into that and address that need. Right now, with the staffing, we don't have enough time and staffing to be able to really dive in to determine what services they could benefit necessarily from a volunteer.
So that's why you would have time on that.
I wanted to pull back and to build a stronger foundation to determine how that was a gap that came up, and how can we make our program stronger so that we can then utilize their program to its full potential.
So looking at this, you're really looking at the dollars available for the different positions and how can you put it together and come up with staffing pattern that worked to fulfill what you were seeing as needs.
Yes.
Thank you. I was just trying to walk through and not exactly sure I was following you.
Mr. Rushton.
A couple questions for you, April. One, once you potentially get all these positions in place, what exactly do you do in the department?
So I do a little bit of everything. I'm helping to oversee. I do a lot of guidance with staffing and regarding how we're going to handle a crisis situation. So there's a lot of input from that. I'm helping with applications. I'm attending meetings and advocacy with groups and keeping well networked with other organizations. So I have my hand in everything and helping in that way.
Do you prepare your own budget annually?
I do, and usually in coordination with my staffing and looking at what we're seeing, yes.
Now, this vision that you have, is this vision for the anticipation of future clients that are going to come to your department for need?
This is in responding to the need we're seeing today, as well as growing into the future, we'll see in the future.
So talk to us about your numbers then, and break it down for us. How many do you have in that 60 plus? How many do you have in the 75 plus, and so on and so forth?
I I don't have that exact, I'm waiting for the census data to come back, but it was right around 9,000 or pretty close to 9,000 seniors. I can look back and do a projection if you'd like. We are seeing unmet need in regards to that service, financial assistance. In previous years, last year it was around 100. We've done 149 applications so far and people requesting assistance. We have 110 seniors who are requesting assistance for our service to help with in-home services relating to personal care, respite care, med management. But we are receiving, and I don't have a great way of tracking the number of calls we receive every day requesting the information assistance, which I've talked about in great detail over the years, that's probably one of our greatest assets, is being able to connect seniors with the resource that they need. Sometimes they qualify financially for us to be able to assist with those in-home services, or to some of the programs that we have that are income and asset based, but I would say the majority of the calls that we're fielding are people that have the financial resources, but they do not have, and they don't know where to turn to. They don't know which agency, or they need that soft referral of us helping them get to the right person at a different agency or something like that. So that has been the increase in what we're seeing, is people having a greater need and not knowing where to turn. And the pandemic, I think, shone a light on that as well. All of a sudden, that people that were not on our radar as having needs, or we were not concerned about, I would say, in the community, people are coming forward and saying, I am really struggling with food. I've been struggling for years. I just don't. Either I'm struggling because I can't afford to buy the groceries, or I'm struggling because I don't have somebody to pick up groceries for me. I mean, it was a wide variety of things that people are coming forward, and they're continuing to, come. I would still say that on average, we continue to get 1 or 2 calls, probably 2 to 3 calls a week with someone who says, I don't have food, or they report that a neighbor doesn't have food, and they just need someone to help assist with that. So those needs are continuing.
I think the pandemic allowed for a lot of people to reassess what kind of action needs to be taken in the event of an emergency, whether it's a pandemic or a natural disaster. So in a sense, it allowed for the opportunity for your department to educate yourself on what those needs could look like. And maybe many of those needs were temporary due to the situation at the time. So I guess, what did your department do to help educate the seniors or their families about how they could overcome some of the obstacles?
Sure. So every phone call, we were educating. It was an education about things that they could do, or prevent, or services they could access in the immediate, if there was an immediate need. We continue to post things in our newsletter, and that has been our greatest publicity and marketing, and letting people know what resources are available in our area. It's just been.
The thing that concerns me here with this structure is, do we need all of this today? Do we have the numbers that support it? We're currently working with Share Services for some of these things. Is there a way that we can increase our contract with them? Maybe put on 1.5 positions in-house until the need grows and things change. We don't have those numbers in front of us. And each age level has a different need. Some of it's basically information. Some of it's, I always look at the family for a certain level of responsibility. I don't really think it's the government that should be taking care of its citizens from birth to death. However, I do recognize that when a family is faced with the issue of their parents not being able to sustain their own lifestyles, sometimes they don't know where to turn. And I think education in this area would be helpful. And like I said, I don't see your numbers. I don't see the statistics or the analysis to support your idea. I like your idea. However, I think this can be done incrementally as the need arises.
I appreciate your feedback. I will tell you, I think we are here and what we're facing every day and not being able to address a lot of the needs that are coming in so fast.
Do you have the statistics and the analysis to show us that you have these needs?
And well, it's very difficult to track the number of calls. I have not tracked the number of calls that we received asking for assistance, and then and how we have assisted people over the phone with information and assistance. I can track the number of people that have qualified or applied for our assistance of in-home services for us to help assist with that. I can tell you that we're up over probably around 40 people. It increased from last year to this year. And for that and we've provided over 444 people with assistance for food, whether we've delivered that or we've connected them with a resource so they can access food, either now or in a crisis, whenever their needs should arise. I don't think we're providing what we're doing is not only providing, the government is not only providing assistance, we're providing services for people to connect with the networks that can help. And so we're providing the service, we're providing the information with every phone call we're taking in, with every assessment we're doing, with every crisis that walks through the door, we're addressing that.
Commissioner Alvarez.
Just a quick comment about the government providing the service. Actually, in this case, what was it, 82% approved this millage? The people have voted to say, we can't afford to do this for ourselves alone, but if we pool our money and send it in our tax dollar, we're hiring somebody to help us. So I think this is entirely appropriate. It's not the government helping, it's our having made the decision that we're gonna pool our money and fund some help for ourselves that we couldn't afford to do on our own. I really, I'd like to point out too, you will be down a full-time position really quickly, and you're already down half. So there is an immediate need here. There's been a need that has been building. I really support your need for a nurse and your need for a social worker, having come from that field. Those are unique approaches and skills that I think are important for the agency that we, the voters, have said we want. I do have a concern that we also loop in or figure out a way to support the volunteer coordinator resources that shared care can provide. We want to work together. So I'm wondering how you can meet your needs and meet the needs of all of us who have spoken with our vote, and provide for all of them. Create the best organization you can that works for everybody.
Commissioner Lyon.
Yes, thank you.
Could she answer me?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know you asked a question. I didn't really hear it, but.
Sure.
Yeah, I did ask a question.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I mean, I think there is room. I mean, we can look at, my original proposal was to pull it back and do halftime for the volunteer coordinator. I would be willing to look at, for seniors, funding that fully, the volunteer coordinator position. I would still like to have a care coordinator in full-time in-house.
And so can you do that? Can you work that out for yourself and meet all of the needs that you have?
I think so. I think we would have to look at, yeah, I think we could. I would be happy to look at that again.
Thank you for your work. This is what the people have asked for. And one thing about teaching people, there is a certain point in the age progression where you can teach and teach and teach, but they will continue to need help. And it's just a cognitive decline issue.
Right.
Are you speaking to me? No, is she speaking to me directly? No?
Commissioner,
Well, I find that to be a very liberal way of looking at what the taxpayers have said. Because the way I look at it is, they said we give you up to this amount of money. And they count on us to be the most logical commissioners we can be, to spend this money in the best way we can possibly do it. So if we can find a better way to do it, a more financially conservative way to do it, and still provide the services, I feel like we owe that to our taxpayers. We put the number out there and they said yes, up to. Where if we don't be logical about this or have some common sense in this, there would be no end to the amount of money that we tax our people for one demographic. While we do want to take care of them, we just have to go about it in the best way. I feel strongly that when we can contract these positions, that is the best way, because that frees up more of those dollars to go to the services instead of to employees. The way I look at it is, we're going to be up over 25% of the money brought in by the people for just the employees. And while the employees are a service, they're not entirely a service. So that is a great concern to me. I have one question for you. You mentioned 9,000. What was your 9,000 number?
It was an estimate of the number of seniors that we have, and we're waiting for
The number of
census
seniors
data
we have
in the county.
in the county.
I believe-
You're not
I don't have census
not
data.
helping anywhere near that amount of seniors. You're down in the couple hundred.
I would
range.
say, well, we helped over 500 with food alone, and not to mention,
Thank you for my other point, because my other point was that we're just coming out of the pandemic, and the reason that you were delivering food door to door for people. We hadn't done it on that scale up until this year, so hopefully we can be past that and as things open back up again. So I know those donations came in for that and that sort of thing. But as far as the best care, I think adding employees to your office might not be the best way that we can do that. I do appreciate the work you've done in this, looking at this, but up over 25% as I can see it, it might not be the best solution. So I noticed a discrepancy in the non-union wage scale provided to us and then your employees. So I think I've got a question more for Jen. So we've got you at basically $90,000 salary right now.
plus benefit. It's salary plus benefits.
But I'm just looking at salary. So, and yet on our top tier here is, comes in at 61. So is that 61 and then a 3% raise and then a 3% compounded and a 3% compounded and a 2% compounded since April has been here? Is that how it is? Is 90%? Am I reading that right?
You're looking at the 2021 non-union wage schedule?
Yes.
So the senior services director comes in at 52,000.
That's a start.
60,700.
4 years is 60,000, yes. It's 61, I said.
Oh,
But she's at 90.
90 would be, no, 90,000.
with benefits.
That's
Correct.
cool.
That includes the whole benefit package.
Right, that's your non-union policy that dictates your benefits.
Gotcha. Okay, so is the salary then stops at 60?
That's correct.
Unless you offer a raise.
Unless you
to
offer
all
her a
But
employees.
we have offered raises, so I guess
Pardon
that's, we have offered.
Well, every year
many
to all
raises.
employees.
When she started in 2012, that was not her wage.
So
So
what
she
is it
started
today? Like if you just take,
60, the 60,000, the 61,000 is her wage this year.
but we have had many raises on top of that in the 8 years. She's been here 8 years, there has to be at least 4 years.
This is a 2021 pay scale.
Yep, I have one each year.
Oh, I see what you're saying, so.
This is what you adopt
start,
when you
and then
adopt
this
your
is where
budget.
they are
Uh-huh.
today, based
Yeah.
on all the.
Yes.
Yeah, take April out of it. If you hire
Yes.
someone brand new, they'd be at the start grade.
Everybody else will be at the start, so these are all different, based on how many, when they started and where they are today.
That is correct. You
Oh,
top
okay.
out at the 4th year. Then
Top
only
out.
raises, yep, only raises given through budget process or adopted in January are either
Okay.
retro paid or budgeted in per the board motion.
So as we go into the budget, we would look at that number and then add 1, 2, or 3%.
Correct.
And
This
go-
year, I don't think that's gonna happen, but yes, that
This
is
is
what it
labor,
will be.
this is a labor negotiation.
Right,
Yep.
right, gotcha, okay.
Commissioner West.
Okay, I
Oh,
think
I'm
that I
sorry.
did have, one more question, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry.
The numbers, can you get us some, is there any way for you to start documenting or getting us a better idea of, the requests?
Yeah, we can try it. I can see if we can come up with a spreadsheet or something. I don't know. I talk with Ron, see what's a good way of tracking that.
Well, who answers your phone generally?
All of
4
us.
you?
There's 3 of us in there,
So
so.
couldn't there be some sort of basically a spreadsheet of, like food assistance, phone call,
Sure.
and without duplication?
Yeah.
Okay,
Well, every day is gonna be different, but
well, I'm just saying, so if Jane Doe calls today about, or somebody calls for Jane Doe about food assistance, that's one client. Or, so, but her daughter might also call tomorrow about a transportation need, but that's not a separate client, that's one client.
But that's a
Another
different need.
call
that's a different
is a
need though, so.
But the same client, so you really, I'm looking at 2 different things from you,
Mhm,
see what I'm saying?
Sure.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Commissioner West.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, April. And couple of comments and then a question. Comment first, we constantly have problems at this table dealing with numbers because we have so many different programs. But most of the seniors in this county are impacted by what your office does. I have neighbors that use your services regularly when they have needs for medical equipment, for example, or resource referral needs. I would also remind us that the second highest population of folks living in poverty are our seniors, and especially our women. I have expressed concern to you about the way that this proposal came to us, because I didn't think it went through the process of hearing from everybody. But I like much of your proposal, but I think one of the strengths of the program is your partnerships with Leelanau Christian Neighbors and with this program, with the senior services in Traverse City and with Share Care.
Mhm.
And I'm just hoping that, because we've all heard from Share Care, that when we're done, we might make sure that whatever decision we make also supports a bright future for Share Care. And I think that may be possible, and I'd like to both have April speak to that, and if we could, the chair of the board for Share Care, if that's possible at some point.
Yeah, I do plan on bringing him forward. If I have talked to him, at some point in the discussion. Did you want to address what Commissioner West has said?
So I think, yes, we have a strong relationship with all the organizations. We are a hub that connects people with these networks. We can't do it all, but it's based on building relationships and connections and to meet the needs. And so I would definitely want to continue that, recognizing we cannot do everything. We're not specialized in everything.
Well, I heard, may I follow up with a question, please, Mr. Chair?
Sure.
I heard Gwen mention something about some flexibility maybe for one of those positions. It seems to me that might accomplish some of what I just said I thought was important to accomplish, which was provide you with what you need and provide share care with at least a piece of what they need. And reduce and addressing Melinda's concern, reducing our full-time staff positions at the same time. Thank you.
Okay, I just want to clarify on these proposed wages here. Like say the accounting clerk, 61,825, that includes benefits or does not?
That includes benefits.
That's
That's salary plus benefits.
Okay.
That's the estimate, correct?
Okay.
Was that it then? Commissioner Sotero?
What you've been sharing is very, very helpful, and what you do is incredible. I understand fully your need for the nurse, social worker, the care coordinator, because particularly coming through this last few months, how important it is to have someone who can come into the home and be able to assess and have those skills that are so important to advise. I also wanted to, I know when you were talking about growth in response to Commissioner Levin's question, since our overall population has remained around 21,000 for 20 years. I know what you were talking about is the shift in population. More of the people, the baby boomers are moving into the 75 and so forth, everybody's moving up. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
So looking at this, if it's possible for the safety coordinator to be just, I think that's probably what you're looking at, leaving the volunteer coordinator with share care as a full position and try it for a year or whatever period, and to see if you can find a way, and maybe share care can do more in terms of reaching out to figure out exactly what it is the person is asking for. I mean, after you've identified, I know all too well that some of my neighbors that are elderly that we help out, they know they have a need, but they don't know exactly they can't put it in words of what they need. So that might be a good way to go. I appreciate your being open to looking at that, because it would keep it as that one's a contract position, but I fully see the need for the other ones you have. And I think you've done an excellent job of analyzing your program in terms of its function and what you think will help it grow. So thank you for the proposal. Excellent results.
April, I just wondered about, you're reclassifying in all the different people. So instead of a secretary, you're calling it a town clerk, is the way it appears to me.
So Amanda has taken on that account clerk position that was the previous position. So she was a program assistant or secretarial, but then she took on all the duties of the account clerk
So you won't have a secretary then?
No, it would not. No, she would continue to be like a program assistant and helping and supportive of everybody, but her duties are primarily with that account clerk.
And then the assistant director, you've got two people replacing that, but both of them are increasing, one's 12,000 more and one's 16,000 more. It seems, to go from assistant director to a care coordinator and actually get $16,000 raise seems.
I'm proposing, well, because of the care coordinator, I would prefer a nurse. So you're looking at you have to look at a higher rate of what a nurse would pull. That would be the reasoning why I looked at from that perspective.
And but if it was a resource coordinator, it's still 12,000 more.
That's an additional position. So that's not comparing that to anything. That's just an additional position. So I'm not replacing an assistant, I'm restructuring it. So I'm not necessarily replacing one person, will not be replacing Nancy. So it's looking at adding two positions.
but both of them are significantly more, you know, than assistant director.
And the positions I'm requiring are professional positions, and Nancy's position was never classified. That was as a professional position in years past when we tried to, we looked at different job descriptions, everything. That was never, the board chose not to go that route. So this is restructuring it to get the professional level of staff with a background with a bachelor's level degree that can to help manage the social work, nursing services that we're going to be needing, looking at it from that perspective.
Okay, so that's why you're saying the description of the jobs is different and it's requiring a degree, so it's going to cost more.
Yes.
Are these union positions or all of these non-union?
These would be non-union positions. The account clerk would remain a union position, and the two professional positions would be non-union position.
Commissioner Rush.
It would make more sense to me to separate out the finance coordinator to a part-time position. Because with software and accounting programs, that job can be tackled relatively quickly. So what I'm saying is the finance coordinator position or finance account, I don't know, I can't keep track of all these names you guys keep coming up with. Whoever's doing the financial inside your department checking, I believe that should be broken out to a part-time position so that we can look to see if we can enhance that in some way with software technology.
So I hear what you're saying.
And then the gal that you currently have in the secretarial position would be able to take on your safety coordination, that part-time position and her current duties that she's doing today.
So she's already doing all those things?
Pardon me?
She's already doing all those things?
Maybe, but what I'm suggesting is shortly down the road, if we have a process in place where we do not necessarily need to have a specific person in that position could be eliminated. And I'm not looking for that position in your department to be eliminated. So I'm saying, let's separate that out in the event that we do find a process that will work for that department that may or may not have to be inside your department.
I guess, are you saying to reduce the financial part of it?
I'm saying make the finance position a part-time position on its own. And combining two other, you have a part-time safety coordinator position, and what was, I don't know what Amanda was doing, I don't know, secretary or what her title was.
So since David Worm left over 2 years ago, she has done our newsletter, managed has done the medical equipment, has answered the phone, has fielded calls, then took on the account clerk duties of managing the unmet needs financial assistance program along with that. So
I'm just saying this, it could be eliminated in the future.
I don't know how it could be eliminated to run the financial assistance program the unmet need assistance program, because it's not just about numbers and paying bills. It's about working individually with that senior to determine, what their need is, advocating for them on behalf of vendors. It's working with dental doctors' offices. It's very in-depth, working individually with that senior as well as all those vendors. It's not just about paying a bill and putting items in a spreadsheet.
The other thing, we do have a contract with ShareCare right now, right?
Correct.
And that's is it a 3-year contract or 2-year?
3 year.
3 years. So we would have to if we implement this, we would have to back out of that contract. I mean, are they depending on us for 3 years, have they? From their hires or?
We would have to amend the contract, yes.
I guess that's a concern, a little bit of a concern of mine, just that I don't want to see the county, I don't like to see the county back out of contracts that they signed for, you know. So that's why I think the Commissioner Elmore idea, if we can work something out, that would be better, you know.
I agree.
How much is that contract?
I think it says here one's 50,000 a year and the other one's 51,000. Is that correct?
That is correct, and I believe there's additional amount for transportation coordination as well.
Mr. Chair. And I think if I'm kind of reading between the lines here, what you're saying is, even though the nurse / social worker, the care coordinator would be housed in senior services, those services would be available to share care clients as well.
Correct. Our services are available for seniors who are 60 years of age or older and residents of the county.
So it's a matter of shifting housing of that individual and the payroll of that individual. But whether it's the same person or someone new, the services continue. Whereas if you were to keep I think the volunteer coordinator is the primary concern probably of share care, because that's dependent for running their program. And coordinating, now that they've gone countywide as opposed to number-based, they are able to reach and bring in all, volunteers from countywide, so their ability might be enhanced to be able to handle that. So if you were to keep that at the 51,000 or whatever it is in the contract, just cutting off whether it's probably the safety coordinator, I would assume you would probably cut that for now. That then provides share care with their primary person that they need to really run their program, and brings the nurse back into senior services with access for share care, if I'm understanding it right.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, let me maybe suggest this. This is a proposal that went to the Senior Services Committee and was approved and put on the agenda, and then you decided to have it here. We do have another meeting Wednesday. April, what I'm kind of hearing from you is there's some flexibility based on the comments here. Would it make sense to give all of you some time to think about this, and April chance to revise the proposal and have that, then follow up and discussion on Wednesday?
Right, well, I'd like to bring.
Yeah, but I'm saying that, yeah, I'm just saying, yeah, still
I
in
think
talk,
that's good.
but at the end of the discussion, if there's some changes that you're willing to consider based on comments from the commissioners,
Sure.
obviously, you don't have time now to react or to think about it.
Right.
Would it make sense to give you 48 hours to give it some more thought, give the commissioners 48 hours to give some more thought? And could you come up with a potential revised proposal by Wednesday?
Yes.
That's one reason we had 2 meetings. The agenda for next Wednesday is the same as today for a reason, because I don't know how far you get through it and so forth. So, yes, I'd say continue. Obviously, the share care people have an opportunity to speak, but is that a
That would work.
possibility?
Yeah, I think so.
Mr. Russell.
April, I don't necessarily disagree with your program, but for me, it's, one, the existing contract we have and the resources that might be available to us there. And this program is a program of growth. And I recognize that our seniors are moving to the, okay, once you get through baby boomers, that number's gonna drop. And of course, there's gonna be restructuring again at that time, more than likely. But on the new proposal, where you have the volunteer coordinator, it appears as though, because the wage is cut in half, you're cutting that service in half. Is that correct?
I was looking at it to pull back to create, because I felt like there was a gap between being able to fully utilize the program. We weren't able to determine what a senior needed not having the strong foundation, enough staffing in our department to make that referral. So that was the initial proposal, yes. And then addressing, and then moving forward, I mean, we can move forward with increasing that.
And the care coordinator, is that currently a nurse
It's currently a nurse,
from Share Care?
correct?
Okay. But you've eliminated that. And what was your specific reason for that?
Because I would like to have that in-house. Is we currently have access to we have a contract for, ends up being about 2.5 days a week. And the needs are coming in at an extreme rate. We don't have the immediacy to respond to those needs. If we had someone in-house and it was employee, more of a team, we could really have a stronger team to address the needs that we're seeing.
Does Share Care have more than one nurse?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. And how much time were you getting from the nurse? How many days?
About 2.5 days.
2.5 days. And what are you telling us your need for a nurse is?
I'm saying that we have more calls and requests for assessments and for a nurse to go out and assess the situation, to assist with the crisis at hand and determining, connecting them with resources. The requests are coming in faster than what a nurse can get out there or the care coordinator can to get out there to see a family. So there is delays in that, and oftentimes we don't have the luxury of, the family doesn't have the luxury of having a delay.
And this is why I had mentioned earlier, analyzing the numbers would be really important to determine the need. And you can tell us, but, data and data tells a lot.
Sure.
And the process that you're engaged in right now, that process may need to be tweaked or it may need to be changed. But unfortunately, I don't really think you've provided us enough analysis to make those decisions.
Well, I cannot go back and track all the calls that we have been receiving. The only thing I can do is go forward and tracking phone calls receiving and comparing that to the numbers I can. We track obviously the number of people that are receiving the services, or, whether they take out a piece of medical equipment or they receive in-home services, or, we've assisted in some way relating unmet needs, or, we track those numbers. And we have seen an increase in those. But yeah.
Well, you should think about how you structure things in your department so that you're prepared to come before the board and ask for raises and additional staff.
I would just like to let April go at this time, and then we can bring Share Care forward and work with them. I really appreciate that, April, and give you a chance to do this. Thank you. Move this along.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please. Thank you.
If I sit here, you can hear me fine?
Yes.
Good. I'm Don Frericks. I'm a Northport resident. Some of you know me, some don't probably. Excuse me. I'm also on the board of Share Care, and that's why I'm here today. First, I'd like to ask, do you folks remember the June 2nd letter that was sent to the Board of Commissioners from Share Care? A lot of what we feel is in that letter, so I won't be redundant. Also, there was a handout. Chet, did you hand that out?
Yeah, everyone has.
Everyone has a handout from today. That was one-page thing. We were prepared to make public comment today, and Chet said this would be a better venue for us to talk. So my notes are a little scrabbled, so I can't follow what I was going to do in public comment because things have changed a little. First thing I'd like to mention is that we're closely connected to senior services. Share Care is closely connected to senior services. We share a nurse. It would impact us greatly if that nurse position were eliminated. There's a bit of a fallacy about the 2.5 days one place, 2.5 days the other. Victoria is our nurse. I've talked to her specifically. If she has 6 patients in the morning when she comes in. She doesn't decide whether they're a senior service patient or they're a share care patient. They're seniors. This was her words. She is based 2.5 days at one office agency and 2.5 days at the other. That's all. She treats all the patients, all the seniors the same. So that's a fallacy that's kind of used, and you just have to eliminate that, please. She says that 6 patients in the day. What do I do? Well, if one's in Empire and one's in Northport, and then there's another one in Empire and they come in that way, she doesn't go from Empire to Northport to back to Empire. She prioritizes seeing people based on what the problem is, where they are, based on where she's going to go that day. So the nurse is the nurse. Number 2, she only works 4.5 days. If she's overworked, we could raise her salary and pay her full time at 35 hours instead of the 31 hours she works. That's number 2. Okay, but going back to the connection with share care, we have no problem with April wanting to rearrange, restructure her organization, except where it impacts us. And it impacts us, number 1, with the shared nurse, and number 2, with funding. Because of the 2020 millage proposal, senior millage proposal, we were funded to have a volunteer program with a volunteer manager, fully funded by the senior millage. That goes through senior services. To eliminate that would be a mistake. We're transitioning from a member-only organization to one that has no membership fees anymore, just a small annual administrative fee, which we'd like to eliminate that also. And it is eliminated for any senior in need that feel they can't pay that bill. So we're there for all the seniors in Leelanau County. In addition, we're trying to expand our reach to areas of the county that were less well-known. We're very well-known in Suttons Bay and in Northport and closer to this side. But out in Empire, we're a little less. So we're trying to expand. That takes time, that takes effort. We need a full-time volunteer program with a manager full-time. And that's what the 51,000 that we are funded on through the millage pays for right now. So I urge you to reconsider not rescinding that. Number 2 is we totally agree, as April has mentioned, the hub of everything, the leader of this whole program, taking care of seniors, is senior services. They are the hub. Her words, our words, we totally agree. We feel that the nurse, Victoria, who it is now, whoever the nurse might be, should be based totally at one site. And we recommend that she be at senior services, based there at her desk. It does the work she's doing now, but doesn't jump around from one place to the other. And it's been discussed with April, she didn't mention it, but it's been discussed with April through our vice president of our board that we should have a MOU, a memorandum of understanding, that she's available to us, she's available to all the seniors, and that would help us with our work at share care, and she'd be available for all the seniors in the county also. It doesn't make sense for her to be jumping back and forth in the offices, but she was, and that's a mistake. When we're closely connected, as we are to senior services, there's going to be some misunderstanding, communication errors, frustration, and I think all those were expressed, and that has culminated in what's going on here today probably. It's really a structural problem that we have here. I don't think it's that we need more people, need to hire more people. Share care sure doesn't. Maybe senior services does, but from our point of view, if we had the nurse, the care coordinator, if you will, based at senior services, and she does the job she's supposed to be doing right now with supervision and understanding, and raise her hours from 31 to 35, that the needs of the care coordinator, the RM, the nurse, would be met at this point in time. From our point of view, we think it would be. April would have to address that. She's been talked to about that, but didn't mention it today. I was kind of disappointed. The other thing is that it seems like this whole proposal is like throwing the baby out in the bathwater. We have a good plan. It works. It needs some tweaking. It has some issues. There's some problems with it, misunderstandings. Share Care is committed to resolve those, work on those, identify what those problems are. with senior services and work together. That's the whole focus behind Aging Well in Leelanau, with senior services being the hub of that. And their responsibilities, as I said in this letter of June 2nd, was they should identify the seniors that are in need, assist them in finding out what's available, and referring them out to the different agencies in the county to get the work done. And that's what we're sort of about here. And I think I've pretty covered much everything. If you have the 2 sheets that I talked about and you read through those, I don't want to be redundant on that. And I just want to address the things that were mentioned today. The only other thing is there's a little bit of confusion between, you know, what's the care coordinator, what's the volunteer coordinator, what's the volunteer manager. And I was a little squirrely for me, and I know what they are, but I'm sure you folks don't. But really, the volunteer coordinator for senior services becomes a care coordinator, and maybe the volunteer coordinator for us becomes the volunteer manager. So there's semantics there, and we call them different things. And so don't let that get in the way of what you're confused about, or maybe. But we're here to answer any questions, and Julie will take over here. Yeah.
May I ask, are you a nonprofit organization?
I'm sorry?
Yes, we are.
Okay, thank you.
So I just wanted to clarify a couple things about, you know, reiterating what Don said about access to the nurse. It's not really as simple as just making a referral to ShareCare for a volunteer. The nurse, the care coordinator, she's a nurse now, and the volunteer manager really need to work closely together to understand what the needs of the person is. So, you know, we do everything from medical rides to phone reassurance to friendly visits. And when Victoria, our current nurse, you know, visits a person in their home, whether it's someone that Senior Services has referred or it's someone that we've referred, she's to gather all that information, you know, what their needs are, and she'll go back to the volunteer manager and talk about, you know, kind of support system she already has, what she's lacking, personality things, you know, any fear the person may have, falling risk, et cetera. And from that information, the volunteer manager chooses the right person. We've essentially, for the phone reassurance program, we've made a match, because that's someone who's calling a senior every week to check in. This really helps with social isolation, for one. It was, you know, we started that program last year, and we make about 70 calls a month from volunteers. But it's, you know, it's a match that's made between people. Same thing with medical rides. You know, we need to know what the medical situation is. You know, if someone has dementia, for example, the volunteer we have to choose the right volunteer who can handle that, and they have to be informed on the needs. So that relationship can work, and like Don said, we're supportive of the nurse being in one place. However, ShareCare having access to that nurse for that reason, to work with our volunteer manager on placing volunteers is very important. The other thing, the other couple notes that I made, you know, in terms of the contract, this is one of those up to a certain amount. Last year, the reimbursements for the nurse was $42,000. That is not, that does not cover all of the expenses of the nurse. Of course, we don't bill the county for vacation time or holidays or sick time. ShareCare assumes those costs, and we also pay, you know, our health benefits, of course. So that's really what the cost of the county is right now for those 2.5 days is $42,000, about $43,000 this year. And last year, when you add in the volunteer manager reimbursement, the total reimbursement last year was $88,000. And we expect it to be about $92,000 this year. So the final thing I'll say is that our volunteer program is what we really believe we bring to this system. And it's really an added value to the county. We're currently in the middle of a cost benefit analysis being conducted by the University of Michigan. And we can have some initial cost results. Over the last 2 years, the volunteer program alone provided an added value worth $130,000. So it's clearly worth the investment. These are volunteers who are donating, 70 volunteers that we have that are active. They're donating their time. They don't get gas reimbursement, so they're donating their cars, maintenance, and mileage. And that was even it was a little lower last year. The value of volunteerism was $58,000 because of the pandemic. But even during the pandemic, we were delivering groceries. We were making the phone reassurance calls. We were doing medical rides, urgent medical rides throughout the pandemic. So as a nonprofit, I appreciate that question. Most nonprofits rely on several revenue sources to survive: government, foundations, and individual donors. In this year's budget, we have about a third, and a little less than a third from each of those sources, and then a little bit from fundraisers and miscellaneous income. So, proposing a cut of $69,000 mid-year, that's an impact for a small organization. I think, yes, it will help to reinstate the volunteer coordinator program to full-time, but we still don't know, in terms of how it will work if we did have to hire another nurse, if she was full-time. We're going to lose that income that the reimbursement from the nurse provides us.
Commissioner West.
You, I think Sheriff here put out an annual report for this year just a week or so ago.
Yeah.
And I think it'd be helpful if we had that before Wednesday's meeting.
Oh, excellent. I'd be happy to provide it. I was going to mail you one. I was on vacation last week. Guess that didn't happen. But I have one if you want to.
Is that something you could email that I could distribute?
Sure, and it's also on our website.
Commissioner Susan.
Yeah, but Julie, just a couple of questions, again, connecting dots here. The arguments that you are making for having a nurse to coordinate with, and we're not calling it a volunteer coordinator, it's a volunteer manager, am I correct with that? Okay. With the volunteer manager are the same arguments that BOC was making for having that in-house totally, not only for the medical side, but for all of the other needs that come through to her office on the many other phone calls that they take. So I'm wondering, since nurse serves all seniors, you're serving all seniors, isn't there an ability to work out a system where if a nurse is full-time in senior services, that they are still coordinating and getting back with the volunteer manager in terms of rides that are needed for medical and other kinds of services? When you said you might need to hire a new nurse, I didn't follow you there.
Well,
Do you feel that the need is greater than one person can provide?
Well, I think that it is now, definitely with the memorandum of understanding, that we know that this relationship will not just be a simple referral, so-and-so needs a ride, but will be a communication effort with our volunteer manager about the need of the person that's going to get the ride or other service. That could work. So that was my one concern, is just, the language of just making a referral. It needs to be more of a communication effort, a relationship between the organizations, which honestly is how it should be working now. But for various reasons, it's fallen into kind of a split time rather than what Don said. It really should be a triage situation. There is another piece. It puts one of our grants at risk that requires a nurse. And we have to see if the memorandum of understanding that lays out access to a nurse through the county will meet that requirement. So That's the unknown for us. We have not been able to explore yet.
And that grant is for service or for research?
That grant is for service. It's for our operating budget. It's for 10 years, $10,000 a year.
Commissioner Locke.
Thank you. Well, I just want to say, I think we have a ways to go on this, and I really appreciate what you had to share with us. I've always been a big proponent of cross-training in offices. So it just seems to me like, we really don't need 5 employees housed in our senior services office and then, contract out for a 6th. That just seems like really big overkill for our department. And I want to say, I've gotten a lot of compliments on our services for senior services and share care. But what I haven't got are any complaints. I haven't had anyone call and say they're not getting service or they're not happy with what they're receiving. So, maybe if we have a retirement, we have something to look at there, but I'm not really seeing this complete shakeup of the department. And I certainly don't see stopping our contract with share care midterm and really in the future not going forward with share care. I think you've provided excellent service. That's all I've heard.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I did go on the Share Care website. I can't find the annual report. So would you send it to Jet?
Okay. I'll mail them. I'll drop them off. How about that? Tomorrow or Wednesday.
All right. Guess enough, seeing no other questions, I really appreciate, coming and giving us the information. Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
So I assume you'd like to have this further dialogue Wednesday?
Yes, and I'll get, okay,
It got me thinking about this dialogue, and this was a good dialogue. It got me thinking about, I'm sorry, can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Change is very difficult anytime you restructure a change, and it's the one department here in the county that is constantly evolving. It's been senior services. I think Commissioner Lauter's the only one left that remembers when the millage passed in 2002. The office was pretty stagnant for about 10 years, which caused significant challenges 10 years later. I think it was because there weren't any changes, and it just kind of continued year after year after year. There were significant changes in 2012. That were very difficult. There were significant changes made when April came in after about a year in 2014. We restructured again in, I think, 2017, 2018 due to financial concerns. We changed the millage rate. So if any department should be looking, because the demographics do change year after year after year in senior services. So no matter what we do this time, will there be restructured in 3 years? Probably. Will there be restructured in 5 years? Probably. It takes, I heard a great speaker one time, I think his name was Jim Collins, about 12 years ago, Good to Great. And I actually was so impressed, I bought a book for my entire staff at my former job on it. But the biggest challenge to an organization that gets itself in trouble is just being happy, being good, and letting things kind of just flow. It's easy to stay status quo. It's not confrontational. What's more challenging, and sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't, is trying to change that to take it to the next level, which is always controversial. No matter how you do it, you're talking about people's jobs, contracts, everything, it's always controversial. So April, I know you put a lot of work in this. I'm not sure it's going to come out, but I do appreciate all your efforts and looking for the future. I know the commissioners all want to do the same thing, to look for the best. It's just how do we meet all those needs? So I think it's good to have dialogue, and it kind of leads into our next discussions too. We can just look at the focus on the topics and so forth and not get involved in personalities. It's always good to review duties and responsibilities and how we avoid being mediocre by just saying this is good enough. And that's when organizations, companies, school districts, governments get themselves in trouble, when they just kind of go with the flow and stay stagnant. So we'll work on it. We'll try to have something by Wednesday.
I have 2 requests. One, if you email the report to Chet today or tomorrow, we can get it before the meeting so we can read it.
Doing it right now.
All good. I was gonna say, you said you were gonna drop them off and that doesn't give us time to read them. A second request, Chairman Bonnet, can we possibly take a break before we go to the next item?
Sure, sure. If you want to add something in.
I just wanted to thank April for all her hard work. She has a vision and she's looking at the future of the seniors in our county. But you also have to look at it from the perspective of us as commissioners. We are using taxpayer dollars. And we want to give them enough, we want to give you enough to meet the needs, but we don't want to create an empire like we had historically. If that makes any sense to you. So that's why I was talking to you about incremental increases in your department and statistics and data, because when you provide that information to the board, then we can make the right decisions at the right time. So if you will, think about that, work on it, and help us help you.
I have just one quick comment, if I may.
Sure.
Okay. I do remember when we funded senior services out of our general fund, and we did very well. We had one commissioner who was upset that we were not paying our seniors to get on a bus and travel down to the Tulip Festival for free. Thus began the millage campaign to create a millage for Leelanau County to pay for added programming in senior services. And that change ended up disastrous for quite a while. It is on track, and I really do appreciate that. It's been a bumpy road. But so sometimes all changes aren't good. Sometimes things going along the way they aren't necessarily stagnant either. So we've seen a lot of change, and I just do appreciate it.
So I just want to say I wanted to try to end this meeting by about 4 or 4:30 at the latest. So let's take a 5-minute break and try to get back so we
Okay.
move on to the next topic. You want to pass that on? Julie?
Thank you, Julie. Thank you, April.
Please unmute.
Everyone's back, ready to start again?
Yep.
Yeah, call us back to order. Then we've moved on from senior services, now we'll look at potential creation of a finance department. Should be B. And I had sent to Chet this morning, and I'm sorry, when I read his mail on Friday, the update, I realized nothing had been said about it, so I thought I should just send a little bit in and give us an idea to start the suggestions and start the considerations. And so these were the suggestions I thought. One would be place financial employees under administrator. Two would be, if necessary, hire a CPA or qualified person to run the department. And then the location, I mean, this is just an idea I had. I know Ron's talking about retiring. And so there's his office, and then there's the vet's office right next to the administrator. If we move it to there, Ron's office could be moved to where the accounting office is now, if that worked out. And then I also believe that there is a large enough area where Laurel is, where she has the copy machine and stuff, that we could have another desk and another, if you call it an accountant, in that area. So those were the ideas that I had, if we're going to do this. I'm not saying we maybe use the same people. I don't know. I don't want to get into personalities and about that. I just thought about, we talked about location, and so I had some ideas about that. And we talked about moving it, with to under the administrator, because that's the way it is with many counties. I didn't know of any other place that, if we were going to change it, to place it anywhere else. So those were my ideas concerning that. And I thought that's what we could have a discussion about. Commissioner Wesson.
It would be helpful to me, before we begin discussing problem solving, to try to identify the problem we're trying to solve. Because I clearly heard the auditor's report. I clearly have seen the auditor's reports for the last several years. I don't hear any public concern about finances. Our budgets are balanced. We don't have any violations. Sometimes people don't like it when we require that they follow board approved policy. We had the issue last year with the sheriff's purchases at Best Buy, but that wasn't because of our finance department. That was because there was a violation of our policy. So I'd like to start by, before we spend a lot of time talking about a solution, let's talk about whether we need a solution. What's the problem? Just because other counties have finance departments doesn't mean we should. There are lots of counties that have lots of things that sound pretty good. So I would like to hear from each commissioner what problem we're trying to solve.
So you believe we have no problems at all? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know that we have a problem that we need to reorganize for. If there's something not going well, I haven't heard from the administrator that we do, or the clerk that we do, and those are the two people that I would think we'd be hearing from. And then the third person would be the auditor, and we didn't hear that from them. So no, I don't see a problem.
So no employees have contacted you at all about this at all?
I have been a school superintendent long enough to know that if there's never any complaints, the administrator's not doing their job and the department head's not doing their job. Certainly I've heard grumbling from time to time, but I also hear about each of us and not just the clerk's office.
Right.
I begin? Sure. Okay, well, I'm gonna begin with my reasons for supporting this. Actually, I saw a bumper sticker in the car just walking in today, and it said, "Be better." What does that mean? We have an opportunity to be better. I'm the only one sitting here who has worked under both the finance department and then finance being under our clerk. And I have supported finance being under our clerk for all of these years. There's no doubt that our clerk has done a phenomenal job on finances. There's no doubt our clerk has a phenomenal staff. But unfortunately, that becomes a personality thing. I'm really comfortable with our clerk running finances. But at some point, we're not going to have our clerk as clerk. So that means, do we give all three of these hats, as Rick said, to the next clerk, who we all think we know who our favorite is to be our next clerk in the county? Would that be fair for that kind of a workload for the next clerk? We've evolved to this over the years with, it's been years evolving to this workload. That has been for a long time, a lot of weekends. And I just really don't think that's fair. I don't think a new account clerk is going to help that either. So I think the time has come for Leelanau County to go back to separating out the finance department and the HR. And it's always amazed me, two things I'm going to say that have always amazed me. Number one, the amount of responsibilities that fall on the county clerk. And the second thing that's amazed me is how well our county clerk handles them. That's not the question. Question is, I don't want to use the term enough is enough, but I guess the time has come. That's why I support the separation at this time. I think we've grown to that point.
Commissioner Elmore.
I would really love to hear what our county clerk suggests and thinks about this whole thing, and what any suggest. She has had a position that needed to be filled for a long time. I'd really like to hear from our clerk. Can we do that at this time?
That's up to her. She doesn't.
Well, I think you should go through your commissioners so I can take some notes.
Well then, to finish my statement, I think all change has to come from within the organization. They are the people doing the work and they know the needs. And they are the only ones who can assess the best workflow to meet the needs of this county. So I'm not going to make any recommendations until I hear from the clerk. And as far as HR.
Yes, that's on the agenda.
Good, we're not going to do that yet.
No,
Thank you.
Let's find this only do one at a time as we go through this, otherwise
Thank you.
we get convoluted.
Yeah, thank you.
Commissioner Rushton.
I will be having a lot to say. I'm not going to say it all at this juncture because I feel this is a discussion that needs to be ongoing. For me, it is not about personalities. We all recognize the good job that has been done for this county historically. Has it been perfect? No. Can there be changes made to enhance? Yes. Things are going to begin to change here. We are going to be, positions in this county are going to change. We're all aware of that. And for me, It's kind of like what April did. April didn't fill a position because she wants to restructure. Now's the time for her to restructure. Now we have to figure out what best fits the needs for that department. We as commissioners, we take into consideration what our department heads need to perform their mandated functions, and we as a board decide what's the best fit on all levels of different things. Is that not correct? Is that not our job? Budget, personnel, so on and so forth. So none of us have a crystal ball. However, it is our responsibility to look forward, forecast need, and be proactive in moving ahead to implement the appropriate positions, technologies, policies, and so on and so forth, to bring this all together so that we have a cohesive working environment. And the Board of Commissioners have the control they're supposed to have in the county and not allocate those responsibilities to others. And quite frankly, I think that there's been a lot of things that have been withheld that the board is unaware of. And I have a problem with that. So my interest in restructuring is for accountability, accessibility, transparency, and so on and so forth. So my suggestion is we look not just moving finance under the administrator, because as we all know, that's going to change. I'm suggesting we look at a comptroller that can come in, analyze, look at our processes for efficiencies, for need, for the number of employees that we should or should not have, and move in that direction so that we can operate as an efficient, long-term government operation. That's all I'm going to say at this point.
Well, I mean, I guess I'll speak next. I mean, we're looking at senior services right now and reorganizing it. We just went through talking about reorganizing equalization. You know, we're gonna have to talk about IT and how we're gonna reorganize that. You know, and with Todd, we'll have to talk about the new administrator at some point, you know, next year, I'm hoping, anyway. You know, also, I know with the building department or public safety, that's in flux even at this time right now. You know, we have a temporary administrator and maybe she will become the permanent, you know, and see how that works out. You know, and then another concern I have is that we've had the same auditor. Yes, we get an A, but we've had that same auditor for how many years? I think it's over 20 years. You know, so if we get a different auditor, will we get the same report? It just, how long, and I know he justifies it every year as it's a different people, but it's still the same company. So I just think we need to look at this. I thought when Rick brought this forward, I thought it's something, yes, that we need to look at. We are restructuring many different things, and there's no reason not to look at it this time. Realize that the clerk has done a great job, and I'm not faulting her at all. I'm just saying, I think this is the time when things are all in flux and changing. I think the pandemic has brought it forward too as well. So I think with all these things in place, I think this is the time that we need to do that if we're going to do it. And I'm not saying we're going to, but I do think we need to look at it and consider it, see how much it's going to cost, see if this is what this board wants to do. So that's why I came up with these suggestions, even though it wasn't me that brought this forward. When I started thinking about it, I thought this isn't a bad idea, you know, and so let's at least look at it. Rick?
Well, here we are in 2021. Pretty much got the same argument that we had on April 20th, 1995. There's the article of Enterprise where shift the accounting to clerk's office is okay by board 3-2. Again, I want to emphasize I have nothing against Michelle. I think she does a good job. When you look at the book that the administrator just gave us a week ago, and you look at all her duties in there, it's a pretty good plate there. I feel that it's time that we research, explore, not to be just like other counties, but I think we need to protect ourselves, liability, and make sure that we're doing things right. And again, I agree, you know, Will brought up a good point on the audit. We've had the same auditor for 20 years. I'm no accounting expert, but I have talked to a lot of CPAs last month, and they said you should have, you know, 3 to 5 years should be the limit. We should be switching. So I don't know if we're doing that wrong, but that's what I've researched. You know, I know we don't like change. I know I talked to an old sheriff in this county. He didn't like it when they switched, took 911 away from him. But then after it was taken away, he realized, geez, it's not all that bad. We are growing. I've been told on Friday we weren't growing as a county, that we haven't grown in 20 years. Then I had April tell me today that we are growing. And there's a lot of changes here. You know, down the road, a new administrator, and I think it's time that we start exploring these positions, and Michelle's not gonna be, you know, I don't know if she's gonna be here, but like Melinda said, I don't think it's fair for the next clerk to take on all these duties, and I think it's time that we really seriously look at, you know, what direction we should go here, and move on from there. That's it for right now.
Commissioner Susan.
Where to start? Change is not a bad thing. As our administrator just said, status quo is the easiest thing to do. It's very hard to move people to change. But change done
Can you
with,
speak into your microphone? I can't hear you.
yes, let's start again.
Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you. I said change is not a bad thing. As our administrator said, getting people to change status quo is difficult, but change should never be done when it's not based on data and facts. Change for the sake of change, because we think we've grown to that point or the time it's now, is not a reason to change. Change should be based on sound reasoning, thinking, and a lot of data indicating what's right with what we're doing, what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses, what are the opportunities. None of that has been done. And with all due deference to you, Rick, Commissioner Roberts, when you brought the proposal, it wasn't to explore, it was to change, and to do that and implement these two departments in January of 2022. And I was appalled at the time. I am still very concerned at the direction we're moving without taking into consideration the process. When we are talking about April's reorganization, when we are looking at equalizations, reorganization, when we will be talking about our administrator or any other program with the IT director, we are starting with that department's director. because they know that program best. They have been doing those jobs all these years. And we're looking at their advice as to what they see are the strengths, what they see are the abilities to make change that's meaningful for our county. That is their job as program people. Our job as policymakers is to see if this change makes sense and it fits together as a whole. But to start with something with no discussion with the two people who, in this case, with our department, are responsible for overseeing and ensuring that that department functions well, and just say, we're gonna change it, based on no data, has been, to say I'm concerned would be a great understatement. We aren't growing. I apologize, but we're not. We misheard April, and I tried to get it clarified because I was afraid that's what we were left with. Our population has remained the same. What we are getting is a shift in population in the senior services department. It's not that more seniors necessarily have moved in, or if they have, other people have moved out. What we are getting is a shift in population, but the overall population is remaining the same. We haven't seen a growth in employees. It's basically the same. Our budget has not grown dramatically. It's basically the same. And the clerk's office has done an excellent job, as everybody here has said, at managing those finances and seeing that we're all kept out of trouble. I think that at the very least, we owe the clerk's office the responsibility and the opportunity to tell us what she feels the strengths are, and if she feels there's room for improvement. The need for staff is not on the finances or HR side, it's on other issues that she's asking for staff for help. I think we're, to make judgments in a vacuum with no data makes no sense to me. And you know my thoughts, I'm open if we really look at things, but we start with the people who are responsible, not with just guesses made without any data on this board.
Commissioner West.
I'm not going to restate everything Patricia said, but she said it so well. I don't know why the clerk is sitting here, and I don't know why the administrator is sitting here the way we treated them 2 months ago. It's not change I resist, it's integrity, and it's the lack of a defined process. And that didn't happen. You do not surprise your administrator. You do not surprise the elected officials. And we did that without the courtesy of even notification. So I don't want to sit here and have any of you tell me I don't want change. I'd love to have change. And I consider myself to have some expertise in the change process. But it is a process, and it involves stakeholders, and it involves integrity. And we haven't done that in this regard. And that's why I wanted it off the agenda today. Because I wanted to ask our clerk and our administrator, they've heard the rumblings, can they come back, as April did do, and suggest maybe a structure? Who are we to suggest a structure on something that we know very little about without asking the experts? So thank you for your comments, Patricia.
Commissioner Walker.
Actually, while April's changes might have come from within, I was blindsided by them. It was a committee that met and brought it to us and expected us to act on it that very next night or some amount of time. And we had to ask for the data today. Still don't have the data. All we got is hearsay. So I can tell you, I see Rick did his homework and found this article. And guess how this was done? When finance was pulled from the administrator and put under the clerk. Took the administrator by surprise. Took elected officials by surprise. And it worked quite well for all these years. We can argue we don't have our census data yet. So we can argue about that all we want. But what has changed is government. Government accounting has changed. Requirements have changed. Workload has changed. Can you into that? HR has changed. Medical has changed. There has been a lot of change. So to say we haven't grown, that's wrong. Responsibilities have grown, and that's what this is all about.
So is Commissioner Lautner saying that the clerk's office has not kept up with those changes? I believe they have.
That is not what
changed.
Commissioner,
Pardon? I have the floor, I'm sorry.
Yes.
thought that was a question.
Well, it is, but I'm going to answer it. So if you think that they haven't kept up with it, then I'd like you to illuminate us with exactly in what way. Where are they failing?
I repeat myself, that is not what Commissioner Lautner said at all. Well, then you heard wrong, because what did I say? We have employees working weekends up there to keep up. And it's not account clerk work that can be done. So therein lies the problem. I spoke about, Rick mentioned, the workload, the amount of responsibilities that are on a clerk. And fortunately, we got a clerk with a lot of years of experience. Grown into that position and grown very well. I was very clear about that. But times are changing. And we have got to be, I think it's as Commissioner Rushton said, we have got to be prepared, and we should be on the forefront of this instead of being taken by surprise. We've got to plan, we've got to look forward, we've got to be progressive here on these issues so that we can stay above it all.
Sure.
As I said, this is not personal. It's not personal for me. You asked some very good questions about what's the problem, okay? Why don't we know what the problems are? Is it because there is no problem? Well, that's an illusion. The way to find out if our departments are running efficiently with the right amount of people, are we spending the right amount of dollars for the processes we have in place? We don't have answers to any of that. The clerk's office is using an accounting software program that's over 20 years old. The particular program that she's using does not allow us to look at line item issues and take a historical look from our iPads. Why not?
That's not true. I will have to interject. That's not true at all.
I'm just saying.
All you have to do is
How
ask.
old is your software?
I think it's
You've been using it forever.
1999.
1999.
1999. So you're 22 years using software. My point is, in that regard, is there's better tools that allow us more transparency. That's number one. Number two, we don't get analysis, analytics to be able to make certain decisions as board members. I didn't see that Chet had a financial background. He may have some limited, I don't know.
No, I'm not a financial guy.
He's not a financial guy. So how can we expect the administrator to provide us with this type of information? We're just plain not getting it. Are we gonna add that to Michelle's plate? Does Michelle know how to do it? And this is what I'm saying. We gotta think outside the box here. We're gonna end up having a lot of departments that are going to change. It is an opportunity for this board to replace the administrator with a comptroller that can oversee books, processes, analyze, and provide that information so the Board of Commissioners can do the job they were elected to do. Our job that we were elected to do, granted, we're co-employers. We are the ones that allocate the budgets, decide on the budgets, who's gonna get how much money, what it's gonna be used for. There's a lot more information that we should be able to have at we should be able to access more information than we get in the fashion that we get today. And if you want to keep your heads buried in the sand and not move along with the change in technology, the change in employment requirements, all these changes, it's going to pass you by. And you are going to have nothing but trouble in this building over time. And I'm saying we need to take a holistic look at how we function and how we operate. We should be, of course, conferring with our department heads, bringing them in and having much more discussion than we have had historically. We should be sitting down and having work sessions just like we are today with each department head so that we get a real feel for what's going on in their departments or with their people. We don't do any of that. We sit up here like gods and goddesses, like we know everything, and we don't. But yet the people we represent expect us to be fiduciaries in those different regards. Does that make any sense to y'all?
Commissioner West.
Well, twice it's been suggested that some of us have our heads in the sand. I don't call this a workshop with a department head. We're talking amongst ourselves with an elected official
She has
who has,
opted not to speak yet.
we're sitting here as a county commission talking about a department, and none of us have gone to her and said, what do you think? We surprised her on something when she was in Florida. I don't have my head in the sand. I want to have a process where we listen to the experts and we listen to our administrator, we listen to our elected officials, and then we make a decision. But to think that the seven of us are going to come up with a good plan without input from the administrator, and without input from the finance people, and without input from the clerk, that's putting your heads in the sand.
Commissioner Soto.
I don't disagree, Commissioner Rushton, with some of what you're saying. I would ask though, if there are analysis that we're not getting that you think we should have, or that you have run across that you think we should have, shouldn't we be asking the clerk's office to provide that? We're making the assumption she can't. And I don't know that that's true. I also know that since the treasurer spoke with me, that the program he's looking at isn't something she's objecting to. She just didn't want to implement it in an election year that involved presidential election as well as all the others, because it impacts her department more than it does any other department. But she's not against it. But I haven't seen that he's brought it here. So I think what you're saying is the proactive is good, but we need to let people know who have those responsibilities, what it is we want to see that we're not getting before we make change based on the fact that we don't have it.
Commissioner Walker.
I I know this has come up a few times, and so I'm just gonna say, how is anybody to know that our clerk was in Florida? I didn't have a clue till the end of the day, that executive day, when this was brought to the table. So I know there's been some accusations thrown out there, but we're not informed of who takes vacations when.
I'd like to address that. If someone had talked to Michelle about this, she could have easily told them, I will be out of town that week. It's a long planned vacation. So I'm not sure that's a valid objection. We should have talked to her. She should have been talked to, and she would have pointed out that she wouldn't be here.
Well, I can reverse that, Commissioner Alguier. I mean, it's been since May 11th. County administrator hasn't talked to me, neither has the clerk, or anybody in their office. But I brought up, it's like, I would have thought, okay, there's an issue. If I was in her shoes, I would be going to that commissioner and say, hey, what's the problem here? What's going on? But no one's contacted me.
I think it goes the other way around.
No.
Yeah.
No, I think it's a two-way street. It's a two-way street.
I'm sorry, I'm probably not supposed to be talking,
I mean,
but I
it's a two-way
think we go to
street.
her to ask her what the problem is.
You know, it's a two-way street.
I'm sorry, he looked at me and I should have answered.
I know, but you have to wait
I'm
to
sorry.
answer when he's done.
I apologize.
Though, Rick, you and I did go talk to the administrator right after that.
After the meeting, yes.
You know, to just, so we did have a little bit,
Right.
he asked us to come in, so,
No,
yeah, or you
I
asked
asked
us.
for that, yes, I asked for it.
All right. Oh, good. So, did you want to address us at this time?
The individuals that helped draft the proposal
Could you
that
move closer to
Commissioner.
the mic, please?
Yeah, we can't hear you, I'm sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
The individual or individuals that helped Commissioner Robbins prepare his May 11th document, I'm quite certain knew I was out of town. When you bring something of this magnitude as a late addition, it's your attempt to come in through the back door instead of the front. That's intentional. I've read some of the comments. I appreciate Dub Rushton saying that this is not personal. This is very personal. This is a witch hunt. Plain and simple. You don't disclose who is complaining, but we're all well aware of what's driving this. It is not up to me to call you when you present something like this. This was your presentation. Courtesy would have said you pick up the phone and call me. I've read the statements in here that you made at that meeting as well as the next, and they all tie that back to certain dates that affected certain individuals in this county. We do an excellent job. This was your legal right to do it. You don't have to sneak in through the back door. This was uncalled for. It was unprofessional. We have Appropriations Act, we have budget rules, we have IRS. We follow those. It does not matter if it's in my office or if it's in the administrator's office. There's things that have to be followed. People sometimes don't like to be told no. I'm hearing a couple things here that the board isn't aware of things. No members ever called me. If they know something they think they're not aware of, they probably should just call and ask because I can't read all of your minds. I do keep hearing a lot about my retirement. And I am curious, and unless I missed the meeting date and I am getting a little off topic here of the finance, I am wondering if you will be calling in all 20 employees that can retire today into here to grill them and take away duties.
And can you repeat that?
I didn't hear
We can.
I am curious, when you keep talking about Michelle's retirement, there's been lots of claims here about me working weekends, which is my choice, not yours. And when I work weekends, it's generally on minutes because we do a fair amount of minutes. And I also have done a lot of training in my office since 2017. I've had a lot of people on personal family medical leaves. I've gone right now 6 weeks without a staff member on my clerk side. That's over 200 hours. That has to be made up by clerk staff. That has nothing to do with finances. Nothing to do with finances. But what I'm wondering is, are you going to bring every individual into this meeting and talk about taking away or transferring duties because they may retire? There's 20 people right now that can walk today. Is this board going to bring every single one of them in here, or are you just targeting me? I think that's a fair question. I'm not sure how much of a discussion we're going to have, because I know, at least from what I can tell just sitting here, 2 to 3 minds are already made up. So that's not a discussion. Normally when things of this magnitude come to you, it would have been the administrator and I bringing this to you. So I'm really confused. I'm looking even at the chairman's proposal today. I mean, we have a treatment plan. It'd be like going to the doctor and getting the treatment plan, and we don't even know what the problems are. So I'm just confused as to where we're going and what you're finding is wrong here and what your objective is. I heard Commissioner Rushton talk about new software. I know where that comment's coming from. I think it was, Jen, how many years ago?
That it was asked?
Yeah.
7
years ago, BS&A proposed. BS&A proposal, it was ran through IT. BS&A software, sure, it's fine. Harris is fine, is what we use. Grand Traverse has used the AS400 for probably 40 or 50 years, still works great. They've integrated some new things so they can go paperless, costs money. It's like our courts, we've gone paperless. The only reason we can go paperless from a financial standpoint is because we're tied in as a tri-county circuit. That's why it works. Otherwise it's pretty cost prohibitive. You want to look at BS&A software because the treasurer wants it, we can do it. Where does all the work fall for getting that new software? Falls on us. Treasurer can't do expenditures, can't do it. And they also charge by your ability to pay. So what one county may pay 30, 40,000 for, you're going to pay over 300,000, 400,000. That we looked at it years ago. It's very cost prohibitive. All I ask, Commissioner Solis-Little is correct, or whoever said it. All I ask is that it not be done in an election year. That's all I ask. It's never been brought back. So I don't know where you want to go. I'm looking at this here, and I'm not sure that everyone here understands everything that goes into the finances of Leelanau County. This is not simply pulling 2 people and moving them to the end of the hall. And if someone has that thought in their mind, they're very mistaken as to what goes on. I'm not even sure you all know what goes into the audit. I don't know who you're talking to, but Raymond has regulations that they must circulate auditors. They couldn't do the universities they do, all of the different auditing that they do throughout the country without rotating those auditors. This is not the day and age when the auditors used to come in and be able to sit at the desk and say, oh, you did this wrong, let me change it for you. We are on top of GASB, we're on top of every change. These auditors can't sit there. You're not doing something, you get written up. No one wants to be written up. I'm not written up. I did get written up 2 years ago because I didn't have a stamp on a credit card bill that showed that I verified the entries. They wanted to see my signature. I don't get written up. Do we get written up? Yes. I'm not the one getting written up. So I don't know where you want to go, but Commissioner Robbins, it was not up to me to call you. That's just, I didn't start this.
No, that's fine.
And that 1995 article, I'd like to go see it. That came as a surprise to no one. Those commissioners were brought into office to make that change. But anyway, I'll be happy to answer any finance
Can I
questions.
clarify one thing on the audit report? Because some of you have not been here. It's up to the board to pick the auditors. When I came here in 2012, the board did go out for bids, interviewed auditors, decided to stick with Raymond. In 2016, we went out for bids once again. I think we have 4 or 5 proposals. We interviewed, all of you interviewed the auditors, made a decision to stick with Raymond. When that contract expired, I came to you, asked you if you want to go out for bid or whether you want to stick with Raymond. You requested that I get a quote from Raymond to continue with the service. So really, that is a decision up to the 7 commissioners to decide that. Whether you should switch or not, that's a choice that you made, but you've had that choice at least 4 times since I've been here, and each time the board chose to stick with Raymond. That did not come from the clerk's office.
Commissioner Nelson.
Thank you for your feedback. And I'm wondering if do you have any suggestions? You know, any change would have to come because you say, here is something we need. So is there something other than hiring that person to fill that empty position, for heaven's sakes? Would that fulfill the need that you have in your department if we filled that position? Would that alleviate some of the hours?
Just to clarify that, that's the position that's in the office. It's vacant only because of transfer. She's trying to fill that. That's not a new position.
Okay, so it's in the process of being filled.
Yeah, that's a separate issue. One employee transferred to a different department. That's the vacancy. This is not a new position.
Well, I knew that, but I knew she needed somebody.
Yeah, we posted that. Just like everybody else, we're struggling to get qualified candidates.
Getting qualified candidates.
But I just want you to know, that's kind of a separate issue.
I'm sorry, Michelle.
Getting qualified people at $14.85 is a problem. It's $27,000 a year.
Okay, is it full-time?
It is full-time. This is not a 40-hour work week. It's a 35-hour work week.
Is that base pay or is that with benefits?
That's just base pay, but it's like someone told me last week, they said, it's nice that you got great health insurance, but it doesn't pay the bills to live in Leelanau County.
Well, maybe we should look at.
Well, that's something that the administrator and I have been talking
We will
about.
talk about during the budget process.
But-
These are union positions, so it's got to be.
To answer your question, do you want me to answer her or not?
Go ahead.
In my budget, you don't have all the budget packets were just distributed on was it the 14th? It was a Friday. It was just a week or 2 ago.
Yeah.
I will have additional staff requests in my office, and it has absolutely nothing to do with the finance or the HR duties we share with, which that has separate issues.
So you feel that you have the staff to do the finance job within the clerk's office?
We are doing it. Yeah, we do. There's
I mean, you're
there's
fine with
nothing
what you
amiss. Yeah. Yeah, because one of the items that I did read when I was looking this over was there was a comment that, and I'm kind of mixing HR, and I hate to do that with finance, but that employees don't want to come and talk. That just actually is not true. If you have 1 or 2, so be it, but why they wouldn't want to go to chat or to me,
Yeah, let me clarify that point, because I'm not sure. HR falls under my responsibility. It's my contracts and job description. We do the HR, we do all the offer letters, we do the interviews, we do all the complaints. Do I get complaints? Yeah, about once a month. Do I go public with those? Absolutely not. Do I share those with the board? Unless the board is involved, no, I do not share them. Have we had complaints against employees in my departments? Yes. We've had them on a regular basis since I've been here, but we deal with those internally. And obviously people have to feel comfortable talking about that. What their office does is the benefit packet of it, the technical part when it comes to the insurance.
retirement.
We do family medical leave through Laurel's. We do that, but it comes to the financial part of benefits. That's when it comes to the clerk's office. But in terms of HR duties responsibility, in terms of hiring, termination, pay scales, that's all done through my office. Office letters, offer letters and so forth. And I think you always see them copy when I send off this January, February. We kind of restructure the process to have a uniform process for each department. And we have a process for the elected officials versus a process for the department heads. So just to clarify that, HR does fall under the administrative duty. The benefit packet, the financial impact, I work closely with Jen actually. Most.
I have gotten more requests for retirement since the May 11th meeting when this came up though. I can tell you that.
So can I just ask one final question?
Sure.
So I'm not hearing any problems with the people who do the work in terms of process.
Well,
Is that accurate?
No, actually, to be honest with you, Michelle and I have been talking since January, probably since November, about restructuring. She's coming up plan. I asked her to wait till the budget process. She wanted to come with some proposals, but every time anybody else has come, they've always been told, let's wait till the budget process. Just remember, the prosecutor's office came, the judges came, April wanted to come. I can honestly tell you, Michelle and I have been talking about restructuring since November. Because, and I'm an advocate, no one should work as many hours as this person does. Yes, it's her choice, I understand that. But I can tell you, there is an issue there. It's not fair. On top of that, with all the election happened last year, especially with the COVID, and especially with 2 employees being out in long-term medical, and we have no subs. We cannot find temporary thing. So Michelle actually wanted to come to the board April and May, and I told her wait till the budget process, because that's a process that we've used. You've asked the judge to wait, you've asked the prosecutor to wait, you've asked other people to wait until the budget process. So I told Michelle, hold off until we start the budget process to look at restructuring. We didn't talk specifically about finance or anything, but we talked about restructuring duties and responsibilities based on her experiences.
And I've been in his office every single month.
And I keep telling her,
Person.
wait until the budget process. Out of fairness to everyone else who have to wait. You know, I didn't think it was appropriate to have Michelle come prior to anybody else that has budget issues, because at least since I've been here, every personnel issue has been dealt with during the budget process. Every budget process. The sheriff last year with extra sergeants, he was told to wait till the budget process. We did. That went through process. It got approved.
So I look forward to hearing what comes from within the department.
Commissioner Lodge.
I've been giving a lot of thought to something, actually, Michelle, that you said about the other potential retirements coming up. And that's one great concern I've had. And I don't know who they all are. I know a lot of them are in upper management positions, I believe. And I think that the point is very valid, and we need to be looking at those also for restructuring. That's the time to do it. That's the opportunity. I think they need to be done. I think we can do better. We can do better all the way around. We can do better for the upper management people in the positions, the upper management people who are going to step into those positions. For the administrator, for the employees, it can just be better. We should always be looking at ways to do that. This number of retirements is a perfect time to be looking at that.
I have to warn all of you. I'll put my legal hat on. We cannot talk about assumptions of retirements because of people's age. Until they announce either verbally or written that they're retiring, we cannot have that discussion. That is age discrimination. You cannot assume because of someone's age that they're gonna retire. So I just want to say, we should not be having that. We should not have the word retirement based on age.
Thank you.
Give people
I was just
announce
gonna say
that.
that.
So I just want to make sure we have to be careful about that.
Did anybody say
We don't
anything
go
about
down
age?
the path.
Nobody said anything about age.
But we
Not
said
today.
about
Counselor
20 people being
mentioned that this
retired.
last month, she said, how many speak come about retirement?
It's in the minutes about age. I would also echo the administrators to be very cautious, just because someone is vested. I have a whole lot of people in here that are vested. It doesn't mean they're going to be retiring.
Yeah, and this is not meant towards your comments. I'm just telling all of us, we have to be very careful when we talk about people assuming they're gonna retire.
Commissioner West.
was asked earlier about, had I heard of problems? One of the problems that I've heard is Michelle's long workdays and long weekends. One is the amount of overtime, and one is lack of flexibility on policy. Thank you for not being flexible on policy. And we all know, and Commissioner Ansari told us almost a year ago, we had a desperate need to hire staff in the clerk's office. I'm pleased to hear, I'm not afraid of reorganization, I'm pleased to hear that the administrator and the clerk have been talking about that. That's the way it's supposed to go. What I'm still dismayed about is that we would take it upon ourselves to suggest that we've got a solution to a problem that hasn't been identified, and we're going to surprise it on the administrator when it comes on the agenda at the meeting. That is no way to do business. And I think we ought to say, thank you, Michelle and Chet, for talking about reorganization. When you're ready to share your plans, come and share them with us. And we'll be ready and we'll schedule that during budget time. But to think we're going to have a solution now, or suggest that this is a solution to an unidentified problem, doesn't make any sense. So I will end my comments with where I started. I think that we ought to cease this conversation and say back to the administrator and the clerk, you've heard some concerns. When you're ready to talk to us and have some plans and some ideas, please share them with us. That would be my proposal.
I respectfully disagree. This Board of Commissioners is elected to do its job, as somebody said earlier. So this Board of Directors has an employee, and that employee is Chet. So if this Board of Directors directs Chet to do a job, that is what Chet does. That's how this process works. We don't sit here and wait for Chet to tell us what to do. Now, Chet does a great job of guiding, of advising, of bringing us information most of the time. Sometimes we're forced to FOIA on the information that we might be entitled to. So my question is, what are next steps? And that is, in other words, some more information. I think this is a great start for looking into what might happen next. How do we go about looking for the person to be head of the finance department? And if you want to look at, we have all the counties in 82 counties in Michigan. How many have their own finance department? How many have their own HR department? I know we're not into HR department right now, but I've heard from a few counties that want to stay off the record, and they've said, I can't believe you haven't separated those. And by the way, I remember that being a big surprise, because I remember a commissioner walking out and resigning from his position at that meeting. So that's been the biggest surprise I've heard in the public is how can one person be doing all these? And I said, well, I've been complimentary. We've had one person who has handled it very well. There's been no question about that. My point is the future. So that's my question is, how do we move forward? And if you want documentation, if you want facts, if you want ideas, we could direct Chet to get some of that. Of the 82 counties, how many have joint, how many accounting departments are under, or finance departments are under just the administrator? How many are under a clerk? Are there any that are under a treasurer? How are they made up? At the same time, you could probably do some of that for the HR department also. But as I said, then the general public, and I digress, so I don't know if I said it or not, but just the general public has been, all the comments I've received back since that article have been very positive, because they said, It's just not fair. It's not fair the way it's set up. And they just felt like there should be some separation between those departments.
Commissioner Elbar.
Can I suggest that we follow the procedure that we insist all of the departments follow? And during the budget process, we hear what the administrator and the clerk have already come up with. Those suggestions will be based on the need and the work that's done. They're the best voices to tell us what is needed, but I think it seems really appropriate that we ask them to abide by the same procedure that we ask all of the departments to do, and do this in our budget process, which is really soon. This has been a good start. I think, we're all willing to hear and listen. Let's listen to the experts and go from there.
Commissioner Rush.
I don't necessarily agree with when proposed 100%. I think there's a lot of issues that need to be discussed, and I would like to see us continue in this format for further discussion. So when we do get to budget, we will be able to implement the positions in the budget. If we wait till we get to the budget, we may not have had enough discussion to determine why we need to make these changes. And I don't think we're going to get to all of those reasons today.
Yeah, well, I guess I would ask that maybe we did get some numbers initially that the administrator had put out, and I would say just looking at what I've asked here or suggested, maybe we look at the numbers and see what those numbers would be as far as cost. And it gives us a little bit of a basis as opposed to the 300,000 or 292 that we had before. If then that we could continue this then on Wednesday. Commissioner Sutherland.
I'm sorry. We're gonna put numbers. There are at least 3 and possibly 4 people who have made up their mind that we need, you can't hear me?
There you go.
There we go. There are 3 and possibly 4 people who have made up their mind that we're gonna create a finance department. And yet, I will say again for what feels like the 100th time, what's the problem? Now, you just alluded to, you had certain things, issues you want to discuss, Commissioner Rush. What are they? Lay them out. Where are the problems? There are no problems and come up with a solution in search of a problem. If things aren't working well, then we need to look at them. We need to know what isn't working. We need to talk with the clerk. We need to talk with the administrator. And they need to be in a proposal. And this should not be done the way it's being done. This is just creating a solution with no problem stated and coming up with justification. As I said, it's making a decision in a vacuum. How can we do that? That is not responsible government. This is a policy board. Let's act like one. Let's get the ideas to come from people who are responsible for administering the county and look at what they have to say before we go about creating positions and departments. And we should be doing this in the budget process. We should look at it beforehand in terms of being able to see it on paper. But if you have problems, please, for heaven's sakes, spit them out. If you've got issues, spit them out. I'm not hearing them. I'm just hearing this allusion to all this, and I'm not seeing any tangible, real problem. I object to moving forward like this. I really do.
Well, I'm just trying to, I wanted to try to end this meeting by 4:30, so that's why I was saying that at least it would give us something different. We've had some numbers already, maybe this would be a different number. So I thought it would be something else that when we come back Wednesday, we can move forward with some other numbers and see if it's just ridiculous and out of place. 'Cause I thought at 300,000, there wasn't any way that this county was gonna do it. But, I mean, if you wanna continue this on, if you wanna continue on today, then we're just gonna start right back where we left off, on Wednesday.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, what I'm saying is we shouldn't be continuing, period, on this. We've had this initial discussion, unless someone brings something to the table.
It was brought to this thing with a 5-2 vote.
Yes, I know.
That's, so I do think that we need to continue it. I don't think that it's settled myself. So I would have to say that, I want to go to public comment at this time. If there is any public comment, I would ask that they call in at 256-8109. 256-8109. Area code 231. And then as we're waiting, then we can have commissioners comment. Commissioner Alvarez.
If we are going to discuss this on Wednesday, it sure would help if we could have the solutions that the administrator and the clerk have already come up with.
We're not to that point.
You're not ready?
No.
Oh, well, then I don't see how we can do this.
I mean, we can't do it by Wednesday.
Commissioner Locke.
Yes, thank you. My comments are on that last speech. And my comments are this: talk about the pot calling the kettle black, because you talked, Patricia, about how you can't do this, when that is exactly how you rammed early childhood down the throats of these commissioners. Identically, in your words alone, not what's happened here, your words alone. And when this board asked for information, no, we heard the Pelosi statement of pass it and you can find out. You would not answer questions about it. You lied about what it was going to do, what its intention was, what its needs were. We couldn't get the information. So that's a fine speech for you to put out today about this when you did just exactly what your words were with early childhood. So those are my comments.
My only short comment back is early childhood was studied by 42 people under a motion from this board for 4 months and then presented and discussed for 2 months. I'm sorry that you did not avail yourself of the opportunity to come and sit in on any of the analysis that took place. But I would ask you to withhold the name calling, please. Please be
Not name
civil.
calling. No, it was fact. And we asked for
Commissioner
additional
Soto has
information. We
the
would
floor.
not get.
You have to let her speak, please.
Actually, that's all I really need to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Rush.
I just would like to point out that we currently have an accounting department, and if I'm not mistaken, it has its own budget. Is that correct? Okay. And the HR department is split between,
Well, it's actually my area.
it's your area
They
under
do
your
the-
contract,
They do the benefit.
and they do the benefit package. I would like to have a copy of your contract. If you could please send that to me.
It just says I'm responsible for HR.
I would like to have a copy of your current contract. That's number one. I'm really disappointed in regards to the position that some of my fellow commissioners have taken as far as looking forward at how this county can be structured in a more efficient, transparent, friendly place to work.
Mr.
I can't let that pass, so I have to say I'm not opposed to looking forward to transparency and efficiency. I'm opposed to the process of surprise and character assassination that went on as a part of this whole process.
You have your comment time. This is not the. So any other comments for any other commission? Commissioner Elton.
You know, I hesitate, but I would ask that labeling, someone said that that was a liberal interpretation. I sure hope we can keep that kind of commentary out of our Board of Commissioners. This should have nothing to do with politics. We all pool our money for fire service and for police and for garbage pickup, and pooling our money for services is as age-old as people getting together to protect themselves in early colonial. So I sure hope that we don't start labeling each other in our meetings.
Seeing none, there's policy for adjourned. Thank you. So we're at 1 o'clock.
Yes, 1, not 1:30.
It's 1 o'clock on Wednesday.
Good reminder.
I started, I know I won't be here for